a lot of very similar where it's like, I've been lied to. I lied to people. I've been cheated on. I've cheated people. I like how you said, systems and all kinds of things. And I have two wonderful boys. They came with two separate men. The first one was a whole experience. The second one was an even worse experience. I've been fortunate to say that I've never experienced like physical violence. The second one came very close, but I've experienced a lot of, I think people don't talk about emotional
Emotional. Yeah.
emotional damage enough because
Hey Danielle. Hey
what up?
guys.
Hey,
Hey guys, we are back.
we're back,
We
back.
are back to another episode of Elevate in Life, right?
Yes,
In your love, in your interactions, in your focus, in your energy. I feel like I'm big. My last name is Little, but I feel big on this podcast
indeed.
right now. Um, but guys, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us every week as we have a conversation about elevation,
Yes,
in your love of self, in your interactions with others, in your focus, and in your energy. And I'm your host, Miss Sheila Little, MS, Miss
ooh, ooh.
uh-huh. Sheila Little, licensed master social work. Well, wait, that wasn't my plan. My plan was for Danielle to Danielle, you introduce yourself 1st.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Danielle MacArthur of DCDR Solutions. I love coaching small business owners, entrepreneurs, those folks trying to transition from hustle to starting a small business. So, specialize in using root cause techniques and focusing on continuous improvement to grow and stabilize your business.
That was a good prelude for like, and here you go, Sheila. Yeah, so I love what Danielle does because I think that it's definitely important. You guys will hear me all the time. So if you're starting a business, if you're a novice in business, if you have a product, contact Miss Danielle. At least do an
Yeah.
assessment. Do you have like a free? I'm
Oh yeah,
sorry.
free consultations. Yeah,
Okay.
because I usually take about 30 minutes to an hour to really figure out where a person's mind is. And that's part of the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I'm here because that I've realized how important mindset is, especially when individuals are going towards a business goal. And even when you transition to, and like management,
Mm-hmm.
um, I have a very close friend that I'm essentially coaching her. She's becoming a manager for the first time. So, really coaching her through because when you reach manager level at a very large company, that's when you enter the politics. And so
Yeah.
just learning how to navigate the politics, not taking things seriously, kind
Yeah.
of you got to sit in your emotions and not react so much. So I'm helping her navigate that as well. So it's a concept that, I apply it to business, but it literally applies to everything. And that's why I
Everything in life.
enjoy
Yeah.
being on this podcast with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, energy, and efforts. So now my introduction.
Take it away.
I'm Sheila Little. I had to write them down because this one is good, y'all. This show is it's my woosah show, right? So I'm Sheila Little, CEO and president of Shaman Solutions, Leadership Training and Development Inc. It's a nonprofit geared to help individuals in the health and human service fields because we deal with a lot of burnout, transference, and countertransference issues, but really there to support that particular population because they do so much to affect the community, right?
Yeah.
I'm a PhD candidate
Ooh.
in business psychology, and my doctoral degree is looking at the relationship between emotional intelligence and procrastination, really
Ooh.
looking at procrastination as more of an emotional issue than a time management issue. Great research. Licensed therapist, right, for the last 20 years. But this is what I had to write. And for today's show, though, I want the audience to know that I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, but I'm also a person who have felt abandoned. I'm a person that felt like at one time that I was not enough. We were poor, right? Like lived in poverty. I'm talking about the poorest people on the block. There was a time where my shoes talked and I used red, listen to me, red fingernail polish to try to glue them back together. And it really looked like a tongue every time I talked. So I had to slide that foot, not pick it up because,
Look, man, we can have a
uh,
whole podcast on our poor stories.
listen, I suffered from mental, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, right? I've been cheated on, I've been lied to, I've been stolen from, but moreover, I have lied, Miss Danielle. I have cheated some systems, right? Cheated people out of the truth,
Guilty.
right? And I have stolen from others too, right? And so when I introduce myself as this, you know, PhD, you know, master social work, intellectual life that's helping you to elevate in life, I'm
Mm.
doing that because I've been through it, right? Which brings me to today's topic, when life give you lemons, right? Because life definitely had given me lemons. You know what
Amen.
I mean? Like a mama that didn't want, my mama had 3 kids by the age of 20. You know what I mean? So
Man.
you can imagine what we had to go through as youngsters, living from house to house. At one time, we lived at the YMCA. She was in an abusive relationship, so I seen her with black eyes, and doing the makeup thing, trying to fix her eye, and you know, so it definitely was a lot going on. We lived in the number one murder capita. Talk to Jay about living in Saginaw at the time where it was the number one murder capita. And here's the thing, I wasn't the person that visited that community and claimed it. I was the house that lived in that community and
Mm.
slept in that, every
Yeah.
night, crackheads, guns, and all of that, right? So life had definitely dealt me these lemons, right? And it was like something in me. I'm gonna share the story before we go.
Hmm.
I remember we was getting high. So I was not like a high getting person, but every once in a while I would.
Partake.
But this time it was in high school, right?
Hmm.
And we used to skip. It used to be the store down the street where you can get 20/20 Irish rolls. I had a friend, gonna say her name. She would always kind of steal some for us. And, so we walked and we skipped every first hour, maybe sixth hour, went to Mr. Swilly stand. Like people who went to Saginaw High know what I'm talking about, right? So we coming back and we didn't got high. And I can remember, like now I'm high and I feel like I'm distancing like myself from the crowd. Like they still back there giggling and just they like giggle high. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
And you over here going deep,
I'm like, I done
introspective,
got introspective high.
contemplating reality high.
So I'm like looking back at them and I'm like, this can't be it. Like, I don't want this life, because let me say this, because when I was in preschool, they wanted to put me up. When I was in kindergarten, they wanted to put me up. When I was in, first grade, they wanted to put me up because I always was like this advanced learner.
Amen.
My dog sees something. Hey,
Your dog's
so I was
testifying.
always this advanced learner. So as a consequence of that, and not growing up in an environment where education was important, like I just kind of was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna hang out with my friends and we gonna play two square, and nobody really cares about education, right? So by the time I got to high school, I literally just had to show up to the class, read over the information, take the test. I passed the test. I ended up not walking with my class for lack of credits, but I mean, I still like passed. It was like an easy breezy for me, you know? And so it was always this kind of disconnect with the life I was living and what I wanted to live, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So I really definitely feel like life had given me, you know,
A whole
its fair
bag of
share
lemons.
of lemons, you know. So when I came up with Shaping Solutions and the Elevating Life podcast and any other the Stopping Now program, although a big part of what we talk about is evidence based, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm not just speaking from my experience, but the reason I'm pulled to that research is because of my experience. And I feel like my walk is a testament that what this research is saying has some truth in it. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I know you. It's so crazy how we met randomly, but we have so much similarities in our experience growing up. And yes, I like that. Where it's like you just knew this don't feel right.
This don't
This
feel right.
just
And I
feels like yes, I'm living it, but there's something else out there.
yeah, yeah. And getting teased for that, right? Getting
Right?
teased for not accepting the status quo or wanting more, or in some way now you got this internal dialogue like, wait, but we praying to God and we doing all this stuff, like what is really going on? Like, so I'm supposed to just, and I'm not against any system that supports an individual, I feel like they're all needed, but I'm just supposed to in some way depend on the system, if that's a career, right? If that's
Yeah.
the government, if that's the federal government, I'm just supposed to depend on them to take care of me. It was just something off about that. So today's title is When Life Gives You Lemons, right?
Mhm.
So when your love of self gives you lemons, because guess what? I don't really love me. I don't really feel enough. I got this shame and guilt lingering over me. My interactions give me lemons. I done trusted somebody. They didn't let my trust down, or they trusted me and I let them down. Well, my focus give me lemons. Like I've tried hard to make this goal, to accomplish this goal or do this thing, and I didn't get it. Like I put in so much work and I focused on this thing, Miss Danielle, and I really wanted it and I prayed about it and all of that. And I ended up with another seed to plant. But, at
Mhm.
the time, I didn't see that. At the time, I saw it as failure, right?
Mhm.
And when my energy gave me lemons, meaning I really tried to love somebody, I really, tried to be positive, I really tried to get myself right. And as a consequence, it still didn't work out. Right.
Mhm.
So life has given me a lot of lemons, you know, and I had to learn how to make lemonade. Right.
Man.
So what I want you to do, Miss Danielle, is talk about your lemons. But before we do that, can we go to today's quote?
What we got today? Quote
Quote of
number
the day. So it's not what happens to you, right? But how you respond to it, or how respond with, but it's supposed to say how you respond to it, right?
one.
So it's not what happens to us, but it's how we respond to the life that was given to us. I think the
Yep.
other day we was talking, and I was saying that I believe in soul contracts. Like in some way, God had said I had agreed to come to this chaos, and in
Yeah.
some way get
I said
clarity out
okay.
of it. And that is my saving grace, that belief that, you know what, Sheila, you agreed. This was your soul contract and you agreed that you was not going to allow it to affect you negatively. So you going to find a way to rise above this. And believing that a rising tide lifts all boats, then not only, Sheila, are you going to lift out of this, but then you're going to help others do the same. Your rise is going to rise other boats, other people around you, right?
Mhm.
So that's our quote of the day. Okay, that's my brother.
Okay,
Hey,
little bro.
Steve. So before we go into that, let's go into our mindful moment, because if my friends who know me know that I'm very emotional, right? They know that I am
Like
the crier.
outwardly or just general about everything, and you the one that's crying all the time? Or like, what do you mean?
I am like, I used to get the crybaby cry. So like,
Oh
cry baby
God,
cry.
really?
What you oh yes, yes, honey. I was the emotional one. And I'm just trying to fix this lighting. I was the emotional one in my family, and you know, and it was difficult and challenging. So if I get emotional during this conversation, which it's okay. I guess I just want people to know that it's okay, right? Life's going to give you lemons and it's okay. But before we go into that conversation, talk about your lemons, let's do our mindful moment.
Okay.
We're going to take a deep breath in. And for this one, I want to do three, right? So
Okay. Oh,
three,
it's about to get real.
right? Like, so we're going to take one breath and breathe in. I'm going to breathe out. Just kind of center ourselves for this conversation, because I think a lot of us have had lemons in our life. And I want us to be present for this conversation. So take another deep breath in. And if you guys don't have your notebooks or a notepad or just some things to jot down, I would just say do that. And then we're going to take another deep breath in. Then breathe out. And like I'm about to do, I would ask you guys to like, share, and comment, right? Comment on this post. We can be interactive. We can definitely have a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when life gives you lemons, right?
Yes.
Miss Danielle, has life given you lemons?
Man, I got a whole bag of them. Got tons of
Mm-hmm.
lemonade though. But look, so very similar. I'm from originally, like I said, born and raised Cleveland, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing Cleveland got better is Saginaw. So in Detroit. So very similar environments. I never grew up in the hood, but I was always hood. I always called it hood adjacent. I wasn't that
Mm-hmm.
far. So,
Mm-hmm.
it would trickle into our neighborhoods. And so I was never that far. My high school, everybody knows East Tech was literally in the middle of the hood. So I ended up going to high school in the hood. So I had to commute. Apparently I was cutting school wrong because we would just go to the community college and play games on the computer. I wasn't doing shenanigans like that because I was too much of a hardcore nerd. But a lot of very similar, where it's like, I've been lied to. I lied to people. I've been cheated on. I've cheated people. I like how you said, systems and all kinds of things. And I have two wonderful boys. They came with two separate men. The first one was a whole experience. The second one was an even worse experience. I've been fortunate to say that I've never experienced like physical violence. The second one came very close, but I've experienced a lot of, I think people don't talk about emotional
Emotional. Mm-hmm.
emotional damage enough, because coming from me, I was always that nerd, that so I never had that worth or thought I was good enough or pretty or any of that, because I was living my label of nope, you're just a nerd. Because
Mm-hmm.
you told your poor story. I got to jump super quick. I remember the lowest moment was they used to give away like hats and shoes in the wintertime and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have any shoes, and they gave us these shoes. I promised you. It looked like something from Wish. Like it had like a ribbon for the laces, and I was like, "There's no way I will wear." Because I had a pair. My crown jewel was, this was in middle school. I had these Nickelodeon shoes, and I thought they were fancy because it was a big name, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those were my crown jewel. Like I didn't get my first pair of Nikes till like seventh grade, and that
Mm-hmm.
was a gift from one of my aunts. Like it was never anything new purchased from my parents. My dad got stuff from the YMCA lost bin. All of our stuff was accumulated from everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start getting new things until I started working and getting a job and buying stuff on my own. But yes, just lemons, lemons. And then when I entered the corporate world, experiencing that, there's no other way. I'm sure you have a much fancier term, but how Black women are treated in a corporate environment, um, that was that hit a lot harder than I expected, especially to your self esteem and just all of this, because you go along on a certain route and then it's like people just continually break you down, demean you, break you down, minimalize you, or you have to play this game where it's like, I can't get mad because then I'll be the angry Black lady. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
you try to work with people and then they don't want to listen to you because I was always like the youngest. I was always like the youngest supervisor or the youngest manager. And so nobody would ever take me seriously. But all of these things, to your point, like I've had a recent awakening. And when you realize that all of these things happen for a reason and you take these things, and I want to try to help somebody either get through it a little bit quicker than what I
Mm-hmm.
had to, best case scenario, avoid some of the lemons that got thrown at me or I picked up on my own, because a lot of this stuff you can't make lemonade until you hold yourself accountable in that place.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of the things I've done, I did them. Nobody else. I put myself in that situation. I did not have the support and all that other stuff, but it was still on me. After you reach a certain age, then it becomes you. What happens to us as kids, that's tricky. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but once you become an adult, and a lot of my lemons are from adulthood. So,
Yeah, and so I think I'm grateful that you distinguish the two, right? Because I was a person that my lemons came from my childhood. So
mhm,
there was these definitely beliefs that I, wasn't enough, wasn't important enough, abandonment issues and things like that. And in my sessions though, I meet a lot of individuals that get their lemons because of their childhood and the way their childhood was set up. They were kind of sheltered, or maybe just didn't have to experience that, right? And
mhm,
then they entered life with an expectation, and then some way, then life didn't meet what they thought their efforts should have yielded, what they thought their personality or their degree or whatever, they wasn't getting it back. And so as a consequence, they became like this lemon state.
yeah,
And so I think that you make a point that life can give you lemons at any time, right?
mhm,
There's no one time or stage in life where you are exempt of getting dealt these lemons, or that the seeds that were planted, will bear, right, a
mhm,
lemon tree for you.
mhm,
Does that make sense? And so I think that, again, this conversation is very personal to me, because not only do I know that life has given me lemons, but on a day-to-day basis, like, I'm working with people that are, I call it, in a lemon state,
mhm,
right? That I want to discuss. And then I actually want to give a recipe for, how to make lemonade with
I
the
like
lemons that you've been given, and and really have a conversation. So, individuals are, if you have comments, if life has given you lemons, like, drop a heart, you know what I mean? Drop a thumbs up, or, put something in a comment like, yeah, because I don't think that nothing exempts us from, even our perception that was very lemony. You
yeah.
know what I mean? That was very
It could be a
lemony.
drop of lemon juice versus a whole
Yeah,
lemon.
yeah,
It's all
yeah.
about the perspective.
So we talked about, like, what the lemons are. So I talked about, it's emotional abuse,
Mhm,
sexual abuse, physical abuse, but in some way, some type of trauma that happened, or some type of dis-ease, right?
mhm,
So I heard this man talking, because I'm always researching stuff. So he said that you can have anxiety and depression, right, without trauma, right?
mhm.
But you can't have trauma without anxiety and depression, like without some
Ooh,
type of, anxious state, or some type of emotional thing happened that caused the trauma.
mhm,
So trauma could have started it, some type of traumatic event, some type of anxiety, some type of thing. But I think the big part of it is whatever you expected to happen, didn't happen. And there was a letdown.
And I think that's funny because for me, a lot of those were smaller events because
Mm-hmm.
it's like I have significant events. Like my father went to prison when I was 12. And
Mm-hmm.
so like to somebody else that may be a major event and it was, but I look to smaller things that have caused a longer impact. I don't know, I was able to bounce back from that better than the time when I thought my grandmother said something to me and then that just ripped me apart emotionally. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
so funny how that perception works, especially when you're a child. And even when you're an adult at any point in time, like I think we talked about that, like when you're in the moment, you have to analyze your interpretation of the scenario and you have to revisit that
Yeah.
because as I grew up, a lot of the trauma and stuff that I was putting walls up against, I gained perspective and realized like these people weren't doing this intentionally, or
Yeah.
or I probably misheard it, or there are other circumstances that I was not even aware of that
That was
came into
contributing.
play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a real big part of, like you said, I like that recipe analogy. Like if you want to make the lemonade, you really got to step outside the box and look at
Yeah.
the
And these
lemon
different,
because
yeah.
big lemon
And,
to somebody else could be a little lemon to you, but a little
right.
lemon to them could be a huge lemon. Yeah.
And I think the most important part is, how do they affect us, right? How does these lemons affect our life, right? So whether they're big lemons, small lemons, sweet lemons, sour lemons,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't know, well, okay,
Siri, hush.
right.
Siri always trying to jump in the
Whether
conversation.
they're unripe lemons or ripened lemons, right? How do they affect us? And so I got an acronym for
Mm-hmm.
this, but I think that this lemon state, one, it affects you lack energy
Mm-hmm.
and motivation, right?
Yep.
The mental clarity, the organizational skills, the necessary supports, and the spiritual strength to become self-sufficient, right?
Amen.
So the L is lack, right? E, the energy and motivation. So when we're in a lemon state, or when lemon something has happened to us, right, that
Mm-hmm.
sours us, that makes us feel bitter,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that in some of my clients don't even recognize this, but they get in this lemon state where they just lack the energy and the motivation. Like they don't want to get off the bed,
Yep.
right? So it's like, I gotta work, but I'm not even trying to, I can't even get up
That was
to
me.
do the thing that I'm responsible for doing. You
Or
know what
you're
I mean?
doing just enough.
Or just enough to get
That
by. Oh,
functional depression limit where it's like you're doing enough to live, because that's what I lived through for a couple of years, where it's like you're doing it so people don't think nothing's wrong with you, but you got to push yourself just to do the bare minimum.
just to do the bare minimum. And it's so many people who call me is like, I just need motivation. And the first thing I want to ask them is, they don't know I'm doing this, but I'm doing an assessment on what made you bitter,
Mm-hmm.
right? What lemon, what is your lemon, right? Because you're lacking the energy and motivation, that's just not natural. That's like that's a disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like, yeah, I just can't get out the bed. I just don't have motivation to clean up my house. I just don't. And I think the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
itself was a lemon for everybody to bite into. And it really stopped the momentum on whatever, behaviors or habits we had. And then after the pandemic, it was just like this expectation that, okay, now you have to get up and go to work and do all
Yeah.
this stuff. But people had built bad habits by then. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like the pandemic actually set in bad habits because you're at home all day, you're not getting dressed, you're just getting to your computer, you got your screen off, you know what I mean? And then so now you're trying to come out of that lemon state, out of that lemon situation, and it's hard. And I think a lot of my clients think it's an emotional thing. And I'm like, no, it's a habit. Like you have built
Yeah.
unhealthy habits, which we're going to talk about, right? So the first thing in lemons, right, is that we lack the energy and motivation. The second thing, how you know that you are in this lemon state, is that there's some mental clarity, right? You lack the mental clarity that you need to really push your life forward. Like you're confused on everything, right? Like, so you don't really know how to make decisions or what decisions to make, or the best decision over the worst decision. And so we really are very much indecisive. That is what that means. Like you can't make decisions. Matter of fact, it's not even that you can't make decisions.
You don't even
You don't
want
even
to.
have clarity. It's like a fog,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Where
like
you're like, I
over
can't think
you.
about this right now.
I can't think
Just
about this.
can we not? Like,
Just,
ask me
yeah,
tomorrow. Just
right, right. And don't even ask, I'm going to put you on tomorrow, but it's
I'm
going to
gonna
always be
tell you to
tomorrow.
ask me tomorrow, and now I know to avoid you.
Right. So again, so we lack the energy and motivation, the M for mental clarity. This is a big one. The O, it's the organizational skills,
Oh man.
right? Without motivation and energy, and without mental clarity, we find ourselves very disorganized,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and there was a time in my life, Ms. Danielle, where so I am late. Like me and my relationship with time is definitely working on one another. I'm like the premature baby with time. Like that relationship started, later on in life.
Said I'll be there.
Yeah. But, you know, I'm saying organization though, like organizing. I remember a time where I was younger and I didn't have a space for everything and nothing had a space, right? And I'm talking about relationships,
Me.
like I didn't know how to prioritize my mate over my friends, and my family over my finances, or my finances over my family, or
Nobody tells you this stuff.
right. So I'm
They say
saying, when I say
go get a mate. Okay.
right,
Then what?
yeah, right, or even how to prioritize my kids or what's important to them or put their stuff. So when I say organizational skills, it's not just, put the dishes in the sink. I mean,
No.
get the dishes out the sink and put them in the cabinet. Although there was many a nights where it was dishes left in the sink because I was just overwhelmed, right? Like, I'm in this relationship. I feel like I'm the only person that even see the dishes. Like, we both work. Like, why can't you wash the dishes too, right?
Girls got
Now, to his
oh.
defense, he did grow up in a family where there was just these brews that I didn't even know about. And I said brews, bullshit ass brews that, like the woman was supposed to keep the house clean, and like the men, yeah, like
I
the
love
men,
that.
yeah, like the men did this other stuff. And I wasn't in agreement with that, nor did I know about that, right? And so when I'm talking about organizational skills, I'm not just talking about organizing in the sense of, dishes
Task
and
management and
task
stuff.
management. I'm saying order and priority. Like I didn't even know how to put myself first, right?
Yeah.
And it
Deep.
was just, just didn't have the organizational skills. So it would be like I'm prioritizing my friends over my relationship and then my family of them. It was just like I was just a mess, right?
Mm.
And I feel like though, because of this lemon state, right, because of these lemons that had been dealt, I've been dealt, it was like this bitterness in me. And a lot of my behaviors was like rebellious. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like I know I'm supposed to do that, but I
I
ain't
don't
finna
want
do that. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? And it wasn't by choice that I
mm.
wasn't doing it, right? Like the woman I am now is more like, a choose to woman. It wasn't that. It was because you said that I needed to do it.
Guess what I ain't gonna do.
Guess what? I ain't doing that. You know, because you said that I couldn't hang out with my friends or even with my mom. Like it was like at one point I just became rebellious. Like because you said that I couldn't do it, I'm gonna prove to you that I can, right? It was just like
Can't
this
get away with
bit,
it.
it was this very bitter person, that could not accept support, right? And so that's the end, the necessary supports,
Mm.
right? So one time in my life, I just don't feel like one, if the necessary supports was present, I wasn't in the receptive mode of them because I don't feel good enough. And what's your agenda,
Yeah.
right?
What
Like,
you want from me?
what do you want?
You just
Like,
want something else like everybody else.
yeah, but I'm saying necessary supports in every facet, the independence, right? The emotional supports, the person that I can communicate with in a non-judgmental way.
Huge.
You know, the the quality of I want to say information that was required for the task I was doing. So like I'm a
Yeah.
mother in a 13-year relationship. Well, by that time,
Yeah.
like 5-year relationship. Do I have the necessary supports that I need to actually execute these roles
Mm.
appropriately, right? Or am I just going off a tradition, what I
Mm.
think,
That's
what I
deep.
saw, right? So when they talk about these necessary supports, it's truly like a car needs four tires, not four flat tires, right? And not four ball head tires, right? But
Yeah.
four sufficient tires to get you, from A to B. And I think a
Mm.
lot of in my life, in a lot of the people I serve now, not now, that was in my life, but a lot of people I serve, like they literally on a journey, 1,000-mile journey with four ball head tires
Mm.
that could bust at any minute, you
Or
know,
flats just dragging along.
just dragging along. And here's the thing, I don't know, my son, his tires always flat, and it's like he never knows. Like
You
you
know
know
that
your
tire is
tires, cannot you feel that in the oh, I was
you
gonna
can feel it,
yeah,
hopefully see it.
right. But can you feel it? And I think this is the thing with necessary supports. Sometimes we can be driving, right,
Mm-hmm.
on flat or with low tires, but because we don't know what it feels to be full,
Mm. That's
you know what I
deep.
mean? Because I don't even know what it feels like for all my tires
Started with four
to have
flats. I've always been driving like this.
right. So yeah, this the way this steering wheel going, it's
I'm having
supposed
a
to
good
go
four
like
flat
this.
day right now.
You know what I mean? What you saying? Check the
You put air in the tires,
PSI on the
change your
tires.
life.
You got to check the PSI on your tires, boo. Like, what you mean check the PSI? My tires always flat like this, you know. So because we've been given lemons, right? It's already this flattened state. It's already this state of where we're just surviving,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that comes to the last. So we lack the energy and motivation, the mental clarity, the organizational skills, the necessary supports. And I sneak this one in from time to time. And this is the spiritual strength.
Mm.
So why do I say that? Because I think that it's very hard to believe in God or higher power when your life is not what you want it to be. Like,
Yep.
it's very hard to connect with this higher power. Who is God? Well, God, if there was a God, then he wouldn't allow da 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 da, right?
Yep.
So it's very hard to not just build, because we can build our relationship at good times in our life, but I think when bad things happen,
Yeah.
it's very hard to sustain that relationship because you feel like, well, I prayed, you know, I tithed, I did all this stuff. So why is it that this happened to me? You know what I mean? And I think that makes it very hard to sustain the spiritual strength that a lot of us need to even be full, to
Yeah.
even understand the the inner workings of life, right? That everything is happening for your good,
Yeah.
even though it don't feel good, right? And that we don't know another person's prayer and what they're praying for God. You just saying your prayer, but that person could have asked for something very different than you. And you know what I mean? And God could be blessing him, but that doesn't always look like a blessing for you. Like all of these things that are intersections of
Yeah.
life that we don't know about because all we know is our line of sight. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And even for me, who like I always say, I wasn't raised in the church and whatnot, but I landed at a point of spirituality where you realize, at least where I landed, where it's that core statement: things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, once I adopted that, it's kind of like you said, that next level thinking where it's like, okay, every time something, when you get a lemon, now it's like, all right, what am I supposed to do with this? what
Right.
kind of lemonade are we making? Because
Right.
it's like, it's not, oh man, why did I get this lemon? It's more, all right, what am I going to turn this into?
Right.
But when, to your point, when you're in that state, you forget about that
You
and you
ain't
don't
thinking
care
about
about
no
that because
recipe, what
you're
to do with it.
angry and you're upset and you're not focused and you're not thinking clearly and you're just reactive mode.
Hmm. And you're confused, and um, you're emotional or not emotional, right? You're just numb. You know what I mean? Just kind of detached, right? Like whatever happens, happens, right? And so it's so many variations that happens when we've been dealt these lemons. And it's very hard to have all of these things that one is allowing us to lack the energy, motivation, mental clarity, organizational skills, necessary supports, and spiritual strengths. Those things are required for life. But now that I'm in this, if that's here, those things are for life. Those things now has taken me here, and you want me to have a perspective of life that's above that, but these
Hmm.
things have knocked me below that. So it's like the turtle
Yeah.
and the giraffe. Like your line of sight ain't even my line of sight. So the way
Yeah.
you talking to me, Miss Sheila, about the giraffe's perspective, I'm a turtle now.
I'm a
These
turtle.
lemons has
I'm
knocked
right
me
here
all the way down, and all I see is
the
blades of
ground,
grass that is cutting me, or that is got me
irritating
feeling
me.
like irritating me, that has got me, you know, feeling stuck. Like
Yeah, they're
you.
like fruit.
I'm not gonna say few. I can't say the word few. Um, so because of the way my tongue rolls, right? So I say few.
Interesting.
I know, right? So this lemon state, I think we've all found ourselves in it. So what happens, Miss Danielle, when life gives you lemons, right? And I said that this was going to be a very emotional show, but it's very actually inspiring, because I think about this recipe of lemonade that I had to, in some way, come to find out, and truly believe that that you know what, life is happening for me, and
Yes.
there is no weapon formed against me that will prosper, right? And that everything is working for my good, right? And so how do I take all of these lemons, all this bitterness, right, in some way make lemonade, something that's drinkable? My daddy make the best lemonade, right? Like it is just enough bitter and just enough sweet, and like it's good. It's like great actually, right? And I had to figure out how to do that with my lemons, right?
Mm.
And so the lemonade recipe, and it's not going to be up there, but I'm definitely going to post it in the chat. Do you know the first thing that we need to do? Again, lemonade is an acronym. Do
What
you
do
remember?
we got to learn?
We got to learn,
I said, take a step back.
right? So
You got this lemon.
yeah, and I should have said, learn a new way to see your life. Because here's the thing, is again, the quote said, it is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is so important, because, people are like, well, that's a lie. I ain't going to tell no lie, but you lie to yourself every day. So why not tell yourself a lie that make you feel good? That's what
Or
it's like, a
affirmation.
lie, yeah, that is going to lift you, that is going to actually give you energy, give you motivation, help you see the opportunity, help you see the needle in the haystack, right? Like, why not tell yourself that type of lie versus believing a lie,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is keeping you stuck,
Mm.
right? So the first thing that we need to learn how to tell ourselves a different story, all right, about what happened. Okay. So one of the big things for me was my mom, the story of my mom. Like,
Okay.
oh, she was like this beautiful woman, and she was a model, and oh, she was just a wonderful lady that was beautiful. And I was her only daughter, right?
Oh,
And
tough
I
one.
felt like that, but I wasn't pretty enough for my mom, right? So she like detached herself from me, right? or I wasn't enough for my mom, so she like detached herself from me. So these were the stories that was in my mind about my mom, you know.
Mhm.
And then I was gonna prove to my mom that I was a great daughter, and I was gonna prove to my mom that I was worth her birthing and keeping or whatever, right? And so from, whew, oh, I would say birth to, but I mean I wasn't conscious of birth, but like 5 to
Yeah.
like 25, right? Like those years were committed to proving to my mom that she had a daughter that was worthy of being loved.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And about 25, I was like, I kind of saw the behavior trickling down to my kids. And I was just like, okay, Sheila, either you can keep this story that you're not good enough, or you're not, even, I mean, by that time I was paying my mama bills. I was a great daughter, but I still
Mhm.
hadn't heard it from her, you know?
Yeah.
And it
Validation.
was like, either you can change this story, right? Or you can continue to try to prove to a person that obviously ain't paying no attention to you,
Say it
got our
again.
own
That's
stuff
the
going on,
key.
right? And I remember just picking up the phone one day and I'm in tears, right? Because this is when life give you lemons. And I'm like, mom, no longer on my watch, right? I'm done. I'm done. I am like checked out. And then the story changed from my mama. It was like, okay, this is a woman who had 3 unwanted kids by the age of 20. And at 15, she had a plan for her life. She was going to be this model and kind of travel the world. And then all of a sudden, she met these men who
Yep.
lied to her, these
Yes.
men who robbed from her, these men who stole from her. And we were the thing that was left behind. So
Yes.
the bitterness she couldn't take out on these men, in some way, we experienced. And I had to separate that narrative, that story. Oh, this is just a woman who's been hurt. You know what I mean? This is just a woman
Yes.
who
Who
was
wasn't
seeking
given the
love.
right tools and the
Yeah,
right skills, and she didn't
yeah,
have the support and the
yeah, yeah.
yes.
And I just let it go. And then that became my story of my mom. And today, my mom bring me a meal every day. We talk every day. I love her. She loves me. And guess what she say to me to this day?
What?
You are the best daughter a
Oh,
mother could ever have. Right? I don't need that at 43, but it definitely warms my heart, you know what I mean, to hear that at 43. So, and I have stories like that along the way. The second one, so you got to learn how to tell yourself a different story. The second thing, we have to learn a level of emotional intelligence. That's the E.
underline, bold.
Right. So we have different intelligences. We can sing, we can know math, it's science, but there is also an intelligence that's emotional about us, right? This kind of charisma, this understanding of how people feel when we talk, or this kind of how I feel, right? As I'm talking, just this awareness, right?
Reading the room.
Yes. And reading a room for the win-win situation,
Hmm.
right? For not just the manipulative, I want to take advantage of you,
Yes.
but compassion,
Yes.
empathy, right?
How do I spot the
Understanding.
person that needs
Yeah.
help?
Yeah.
Or yes.
Yeah. Without exhausting myself, right?
Yes.
At the same time. And so having a level of emotional intelligence, right, is this second thing you need to do in this recipe. So one, learn how to tell yourself a different story. Two, learn emotional intelligence. Three, that's the E in lemonade. You got to do what, Miss Danielle?
You got to mend broken relationships.
Yes.
You got to
So this lemonade recipe, when life has given you lemons, you got to learn to tell yourself a different story. You got to learn emotional intelligence, but you definitely have to mend this brokenness, these pieces of you that is not requiring you to have peace, right? So this PIECES, that is not allowing you to have PEACE, right? Because there's a brokenness. And a lot of times we mend these broken relationships outside of ourselves, and we never think about mending the broken relationship that we have with ourselves.
mm,
right? So the brokenness in us is the first relationship that we have to mend. And how we do that is through forgiveness, one, letting go and compassion and all of
Yeah.
that. But I was, just another short story about mending broken relationships. I was with a couple today, and the boyfriend cheated when they first met, and they was in almost a year in, and she just can't get over it, right? She just can't get over the fact that her boyfriend cheated on her, and. And I said, she's like, but I forgave him. It just seems like it's just so much going on. And I said, but have you forgiven you?
Mm.
And she was like, well, I mean, literally, this her face. For what? Right?
Gotta
And I
have that
said,
accountability.
for breaking your own rule,
Yes.
because you took a man back that you vowed you would never do. So at some time in your life, you said, if a man cheat on me,
Yes.
I'm never going to take him back, you know. And if that, yes, so you broke, right, a
Yeah.
vow that you made to yourself. And have you forgiven yourself for that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was just like, oh, you're
That's
so
deep,
right.
man. So many people need to hear that. 'Cause I
Yeah.
just had I had a similar conversation with the whole you make the rules in your relationship. There's so
Yeah.
many narratives outside, and everybody loves to put the scapegoat on. Well, nope, he cheat on me. I ain't never gonna leave. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you know the percentages of who actually leaves.
Right, right. Now, it's a lot of people that emotionally leave and physically stay, and it's a lot of people that physically leave and emotionally go. I
Yes.
think that's the same thing. But yeah, but I think that we have all lied to ourselves. We have
Yes,
all
and it's
told ourselves
because you
something.
believe that outside narrative of what a
Yeah,
relationship is supposed to be. He's not
yeah,
supposed to cheat on me, and then
yeah,
you still stay. So now it's that internal damage. Well, why did I stay? What's wrong with me? I can't go
yeah.
nowhere. Don't nobody
Yeah,
else want me. All this.
yeah, and then my friends gonna think I'm stupid, and
Yeah, my friend
am I
going.
stupid for staying? And I know he cheated. Just all of that stuff that going in our mind. But again, cheating ain't the only thing. I mean, it's stuff that we said we would
Yeah,
never do. We'd never lie. We'd never steal. We'd never do some things. Never cheat. Never date a man. Or got a girlfriend. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And all of that stuff we have to forgive ourselves for, not
yes,
because at the point at that time we justify it. We
mm,
know why we did it,
yeah.
but when we
It's
think
almost like we're
about our
lying to
history,
ourselves.
right? But when we think about the stories that we told ourselves in the past, we just got to create that domino effect. Like everything is in alignment. So let me forgive myself for this behavior that went against everything, every value. We talked about this in our last show, the guilt thing, because you
Mm,
feeling guilty because you broke a
broke
value.
rule, yeah.
Yeah. And so, no, this is not about him. This is more about you and I mean, in that session, like I felt the heaviness of her, I don't want to call it misery, but just of her lowering,
Yeah,
right?
oh, yeah,
Like the weight
anguish.
of, yeah, her anguish of, and I'm ashamed, right?
Yeah,
Because I did this thing and I'm with this man and I love this man and he's investing in me and we get along great. Why can't I just
get past
get
it.
get past this? Well, maybe because you haven't forgiven yourself, for that. And so, many broken relationships. Number 4, the O in lemonade. So, to the lemonade recipe, learn emotional intelligence, many broken relationships, and then overcoming your obstacles.
Yes.
To be able to make lemonade out of the lemons that life has given you, you're going to have to learn how to overcome the obstacles that you face in your life. And so many of us are, again, another story, talk to a client, and she's like, just when the obstacles come, I just quit. And I
Mm.
said, so do you think the obstacle is there to stop you? Or do you think the obstacle is there to strengthen you? Right? And so she's like, well, I mean, logically, I'm going to say the obstacle is there to strengthen me. Right? Okay, so why are you stopping?
Mm.
Right? Because she never thought about it in that way. She just saw an obstacle, felt the emotions, and couldn't overcome it. And truly, it was about strengthening. Okay, what strength? How is this going to strengthen me? And I was like,
Yeah.
so what if she was like, can I get 90% of the way and then I just give up? And I was like, yeah, but what if what you're looking for is in that 10% that you're
Mm.
walking away from?
Yeah.
Right. And I think the biggest obstacles for me was like I tell people I can get all the way back. I can have 100-step strategy plan and I can get you all the way back from 199 for my own life. And Miss Danielle, I can get myself to like 5, right? So I count it back, reverse engineer all the way back to 5,
Yeah.
between 5 and 4.
Mm.
But 3, 2, and 1, those were my obstacles.
Mm.
Like, I don't know where to start. I don't know. Like, I could do so many things. It was just so overwhelming for me
Yeah.
to, I can reverse engineer. Okay, this is going to take 100 steps. We're going to reverse engineer. These are the steps I need to take. Now, 1, 2, and 3, what do I need to do? How does that look like? It was so paralyzing for me because that is the 3 big things that tapped into my insecurities, that
Mm.
made me procrastinate, that made me feel like these issues. That's why I started getting a coach and start really unpacking, like, okay, what does that look like? Okay, if I took 1, how do I feel about 1, right? And really unpacking these emotions. So, overcoming our obstacles, the N in Lemonade is negotiating life on your terms.
Mm.
What you think about that one, Miss Dan?
I like
Negotiate life on your terms.
I like that because that was part of my breakthrough where you start to figure out where you fall. Because like I said, I think so much of our life is looking outside and kind of doing like this constant comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I want to be like that, or I kind of want to do that, or I think I could try that. And instead of saying, no, this is what I'm going to do. This is me. I am not this person. I am not this kind of person. I am not this kind of person. I think it's always easier to start with where you're not.
Mm-hmm.
With people like, and that was very big for me because then it takes the weight and the guilt off of trying to be something you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's exactly what you said. You constantly have this thing kind of in the back of your mind, like, oh, well, you're supposed to be doing this.
Right.
But when you say, no, I'm not supposed to be doing this because I'm not that person. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
ask for help for that, or I'm going to get help, or I'm going to give that. I'm not even going to embark on that journey because that journey is not for me. So I think that's the way I interpret it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great interpretation of it. And then there's also the part of the terms of agreement,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as I'm negotiating life on my terms, it's being comfortable with saying no
Mm-hmm.
and being comfortable with saying yes. And being comfortable, Miss Danielle, like I was talking about earlier about being men in those relationships,
Mm-hmm.
being comfortable with being something different today than you was yesterday, right? So one of my things that I negotiate
Brand
in my
new.
life is that I give myself permission to change my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now in dating, that is very much I would say intimidating to men, right? Because they're like, but you give yourself this, yeah, but I'm always gonna do what's in the I'm always gonna create win-win situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to worry about me like waking up today like, oh, I'm just gonna break up with you. Like if there's a
There will
conflict,
be
like we're
time.
gonna have a conversation about it, right?
Yeah.
But if and that's the thing, like negotiating a life on my terms is what's gonna make me comfortable, what's gonna make me feel good, right? What's what
Boundaries.
I feel like I need at this time in my life, and being okay to say, hey, this is what I need. If you can't provide that career, if you can't provide that, spiritual walk, if you can't provide that man, if you can't provide that friend, then I can access that in other places. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't just have to depend on one place, one
Yes.
person, one thing, right? So this negotiating, and it
Because
is
you
really a
came to that point where
negotiation.
you know yourself
Yeah.
and you
Or you're
know,
developing yourself.
yes,
Yeah.
and you
Right.
know what has not. You assess
Yes.
this has not worked in the
Yes.
past. I will no
Yes.
longer do this.
Yes. Yes. That don't work for me. Now it may work for the 50-year-old Sheila, but it definitely ain't working for the 43-year-old Sheila. All right.
Well,
Action towards your goal, that's the A, and we talked about that, right? Just taking action, doing something different. Hey, you've come to this point in this fork in the road, and you've always went left, and you always went left, and you always went left, or you stayed at the fork, but you got to act now, right? So you got to take action. You got to take this right lane. Like, you got to do something towards the life that you're trying to live. D is develop healthy habits. um Again, first we make our habits, and our habits make us. I cannot stress that enough, that a lot of our issues are not depression, it's not anxiety, it's not lack of motivation, it's not anything but habit. Like, you are used to going off on somebody,
Yeah.
so you just keep going off on people. You
Yeah.
are used to laying in the bed all day, so that's what naturally your brain and everything wants to do. Like, you're going to have to take an
Because you
action
haven't
towards
seen
your
the
goal, right?
consequences of you're not aware. It's almost being in the eye of the storm. You're not seeing the consequences. Everything looks fine, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And like, again, first we make our habits, and our habits make us. And I think that if we really took a look at the habits that we made, if it's cussing, if it's how we speak to people, those are habits that you developed over time.
Hmm.
And it's funny because right now, because the mind is so influential, if you went around somebody that said, you know what I'm saying, 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 you gonna go home and be like, you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, you're gonna pick up on that behavior. If you went around somebody that
Look,
was
that happened to
like,
me when I came to the South. Like when I came to the South, I found myself picking up, and I'm like, why am I talking like that? And then I was like, oh God, I don't want them to think I'm mocking them, but it's just I was around it, and so you pick up this like janky South accent. And I was like, would you stop doing that?
yeah,
But
but
like,
it's habit. It's
you
habit,
can't
and
help
it's the
it.
brain is just so influential that it's so suggestible. Let me say
Yes.
that. And this is why advertisement work. This is why things, because they can pop a picture up to you or say something so many
And
times,
repeat it,
and
repeat
your
it.
brain is so suggestible that it's going to hear it, right?
Hmm.
And then, the E. So we got the E is to establish your net worth, and I'm not just talking about money, right? I'm talking about establish that you are a worthy individual
Yes.
that is valuable, right? Of the things that you want in life. Okay. So the recipe for lemonade: learn how to tell yourself a different story, learn a level of emotional intelligence, learn how to mend your broken relationships, learn how to overcome your obstacles, learn how to negotiate life on your terms, learn how to take action towards your goals, learn how to develop healthy habits, and then learn how to establish your net worth. Because life is going to continue to give us lemons, right?
Oh, that last one. That last one is deep
Yeah.
because
But
that's yeah.
yeah, but when it gives you lemons, right? How do we take those lemons and create this lemonade? And one of the ways that you can, learn how to, I don't know, like, use this recipe is listen to Elevated Life every week, because we give you small bite-sized recipes, BYTES, which means over this system, um, like how to shape your life and how to elevate in life and sit in it, and unique, that's what you are, right? And
Yes.
so a part of this next quarter is going to be digging deeper into those acronyms, right? The Shape Your Life acronym, the Elevating Life acronym, the sit in an acronym. Like, what do these acronyms really mean? The unique, that's what you are. What's another one that we did?
Fix it. Then you have a
Exit
fix it.
acronym,
Yeah.
mindset, right?
Mindset.
Right.
Yes.
um and really digging into those a little deeper, because we understand that life has given you lemons, especially as a minority population, as women, as individuals that's just trying to take charge of your life, right?
Yes.
And become the leading lady that you desire and deserve, right? Or the leading gentleman, because we have men, right?
Mhm.
And you're feeling this dis-ease or this disconnect in your life, and you're thinking like, man, I feel like I want more. I feel like I deserve more,
It's because you
but
do.
yeah. But what do I do to do that? Well, first you're going to log in and listen to our show so we can break those acronyms down a little bit more so that you can learn how to take these lemons that life has given you and make lemonade, right? In some way, shape, or form, you're going to learn how to tell your story differently. Either you're going to learn how to get some emotional intelligence. Either you're going to learn how to mend these broken relationships. Either you're going to learn how to overcome your obstacles, right? Negotiate life on your terms. You're going to learn how to act towards your goals, develop healthy habits, and establish your network. One of those letters, Miss Danielle and I is going to tell you how to do. And you can just play bingo with us, right? And the first person to get
I already got
lemonade.
one picked out. I was like, man, we got to do a whole thing on this one. So
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
save
yeah,
that for later.
yeah. And if you want a quick fix, you can sign up for my Stop It Now workshop. That'll be coming out at the end of this month, right?
Ooh,
Stop It Now. Again, it's just based on a framework that has been trademarked and research based, that really focuses on, really before we can start a new behavior, right? It's something that we need to stop. And in that workshop, it's me really talking about what do we need to stop. And that was the first step that I made. It was some stuff I had to stop doing in
mhm.
my life, right? One of those things was I had to stop seeing these lemons as something bad,
Yeah.
right? And see them as an opportunity for me to know what I didn't want and then to clarify what I did. Okay,
Mhm.
well, since you know what you don't want, then what do you want, Miss Sheila Little? MS. Miss
Mhm.
Sheila Little, right?
When are you gonna complete your doctorate program?
So I'm going through the IRBs now. So my IRBs is like basically where you have to submit all of your information and like the researching board says yes, this qualifies. So I've already went through my chair and my board, but the research board, like the ethics committee, basically.
Okay.
And so we got the all of that. So that should be done by the end of this month. And then I'll start my research this end of this quarter, and we should have that back. So like I'll be giving out samples for people to take the emotional intelligence test and the procrastination test, and so we should
Nice.
be collecting that data. So that's what the IRBs it said that Sheila has
Okay,
the
so that's
permission
you
to
had to
collect.
create a
Yeah,
research experiment, and now they have to vet the experiment before you can
yeah,
actually.
yeah. So
I've
Sheila,
always wondered what went into a PhD
yeah,
program. I've only heard tidbits.
yeah. It's like
I got a
Miss Sheila Little
personal
has
buddy
the
giving me an
credentials
honor.
to perform this test. Like
Mhm.
she understands how to read this test. She has the knowledge to be able to extract the information from this test. So
And
yeah,
you know,
so
and I gotta say this because the more you talk about it, it blows my mind because I think I've said it once or twice. This is a manufacturing term. So there's something that's called a Lean Six Sigma certification. And the highest is a black belt. So I hold a lean because they have white, yellow, green, and black. And then there is a master black belt. So a master black belt is somebody that can make another black belt. And it's so crazy because almost everything you describe, that's what I did just in a small
number,
microcosm of an individual manufacturing plant. But
yeah,
I had to pick a problem. I had to assess the problem statistically to
mm-hmm,
prove that it was a problem and then
yeah,
break it down statistically what the solutions were. And I just think that is so crazy because in manufacturing world, that's like one of the highest things that you can get
yeah,
to show I know
yeah.
how to do stuff.
Right. I know how to do stuff.
And
So
so
here's the thing, and again, like walk it like a talker, walk it like a talker. So a big part of this PhD journey is me developing more emotional intelligence because every time, like, so I had to, present my dissertation to my chair and to my committee. And when I tell you, I shut the computer down, like I'm not going to do this, like I can't believe, like I'm actually going to be a doctor, like this is a lifelong dream, like all the emotions that came up for me that made me feel insecure, inadequate, like they're gonna ask so many questions. I really don't know about research design. Like all of that stuff came up for me. And it was because of the lemons that had been given to me, right,
yes.
in my life, and all the times that people had said stuff. And it was just like, you know what, this is an opportunity, not at this point, not to prove them, but to show to yourself, right? To
Yeah.
show yourself approved. And I had a friend at that time. I called him. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, I'm finna give up. I'm just finna. He started researching stuff like, what is you look, you ain't even on the right database, but I definitely appreciate you Googling it, you know. But just his little spark of inspiration, right? And my thing, I just finished it, sent it off. I sat in front of them. It was like an hour and a half, did my proposal. They end up passing it. Do you know I sat in pass mode for 3 months. Literally didn't do anything. Like I had to do my research
Yeah.
design. I had to send it back. But just me, that feedback was like, okay, we need you to fix this from an ANOVA to a different one.
Yeah.
Like just sitting and thinking about, okay, how I'm gonna do that, you know? But here's the thing, like upgrading my belief system, creating lemonade, and then it was like, okay, do it. I'm talking about in an hour, sat down, turned that in, it got approved, right? So each level, there is a level of resistance that I feel that I have to emotionally erode myself of that belief.
Yes.
One, because of the disbelief that you're here, right? In
Yes.
this state. The other is the responsibility that I feel like is going to come with that. And so again, this is not, when I talk about these, when life gives you lemons, right? You're going to always have an opportunity to make lemonade, right?
Yeah.
With these lemons. And it's going to look different in your relationships and with your kids. When your kids are kids, it's going to look different than when they turn teenagers and when they become adults. And, you know, so these have been lemons and they're yours and they're your stories. But you always can transform these lemons that life has given you at any stage in your life multiple times, right?
And
It's
I
abundance of it.
I gotta tell my brief lemon story in connection with me getting my black belt. So the master black belt that was teaching me, that's the woman who I consider my mentor. She pushed me because it's like she saw I could figure it out.
Okay.
And she would just say, go do this. And then I would start making the connections. And I did all this work. And that single handedly throughout my entire corporate career, the presentation piece, that broke me down so bad because when it comes to manufacturing, you do basically essentially like the design of the experiment and you do all the work to prove this is the problem, right? And then the next piece is you have to provide what you think are viable solutions, typically to save money. So the goal is to save money or efficiency and things of this nature. And they didn't like what I came up with, which was the data, and they didn't like the solutions, and they started questioning me. And I mean, I've just never been so defeated in my life. Like I literally wanted to quit, like because
Mm-hmm.
it was just I knew I had done the work and I knew what I was talking about. My mentor was behind me because she was like, this ain't gonna go that well because it's not what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up turning from that was because I was just super, I became a QA manager and I did a lot of amazing things based on everything that I learned from
Mm-hmm.
that. And even though they did not technically approve my project, because you still get credit for doing the black belt as long as you do all of the work. They never
Mm-hmm.
approved my project, which they should have did. But
But the
hindsight, they ended
process.
up doing something very similar a couple of years later, like right before I was getting ready to leave. Of course, that's
Mm-hmm.
how it works. But
Right.
that was my ultimate lemons because in that moment, I mean, I felt like a lemon truck had been dumped on me because it's like I did all this work and y'all don't want to trust what I say, but eventually you trusted me with this management position and you trusted me with, hundreds of $1,000 budget and
Yeah.
people and metrics and things of all this nature and just that perspective. And even the main person that beat me up the most ended up, years later like, oh, you're the best, you know that
Yeah.
feedback. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
those lemons in that moment.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, in audience, if you've had a lemon moment or something that happened to you where you've lacked the energy, motivation, mental clarity, organizational skills, the necessary support, or even spiritual strength, you
Yes.
know, comment or like our post or share. And like I always say, this may not be for you. You may have learned how to make lemonade in your life, right? You may have already unlocked your potential and shaped your life and fixed it. And you know that unique is what you are, right? But there may
Make
be
sure you
somebody
know
that,
somebody.
right, there may be somebody that that may not have that information. So like, share,
Send them a YouTube
comment,
video.
and then we're always here. If you're in a place where you are ready to stop it now, again, you can sign up for the Stop It Now workshop. Just go to at I Am Shaping Solutions and click that tab. And we always have our 30-day affirmation challenge that is that you
Speak
can
life
go
into
into.
yourself.
Yes. But just remember that life is going to give us lemons, and how that that life has given you this and it's affecting you is just that bitterness, right? It's that lack of energy, motivation, organizational skills, and necessary supports and spiritual strength. I just added that one in certain audiences. So I just wanted to add it for this audience because I know that we're God fearing, right? And faith driven individuals. And sometimes that's a difficult journey in itself because of the limits that we have had to acquire in our life. And again, it's not what happened to you, but how you respond to it. This is Elevating Life. I'm Sheila Little. It's my co host.
Danielle.
Again, I hope that this is another session or another conversation that has sparked some type of energy in you, or some type of change, or some type of I don't know, inspiration. You can always DM us if you have any questions. If you
Please.
want a free consult or something like that. Follow us on all social media, on Facebook at Elevating Life. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, we do.
Till later. I love you. I actually love you guys. Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Bye bye.